Today's conversation is with Kim Selby, and Kim is about my age. She started a podcast at age 64 and got her first modeling gig at 64. So Kim is somebody who keeps starting and finding new things to do. She has had a very interesting background. She has lots of interests. She has lots of energy. She exudes optimism, and I just loved her. I loved so much. And we just had a great chat. That's probably why it's a longer episode, because we just had so many things to talk about. And she prompted some things that I thought of that I'm not sure I shared before on episodes. But one of the things that she brought up was shocking. Was actually, I was like, I didn't expect it. I guess that's why it was shocking. It was not what I expected her to say. And it made my jaw drop, actually, I think. I don't know. I have to look back and see if it really did. But it was something that she learned after her mother died. And we never know where life will lead us and what we'll find out. Sometimes there's a lot of surprises. And no matter how old we are, they're revealed. So, but she's just somebody who has just great attitude and really positive outlook. And the world needs more of people like her. She talks about her brand, which is all about being sparked. So that's what we have in common. And so she is all about being sparked, and she is definitely an example of being sparked. So with no further ado, let's get to the conversation. Welcome to another episode of Not Your Average Lives. And today I have with me Kim Selby. It's an easy name to pronounce. So yes. Yes. And we have such a parallel brands, I would say. So when I saw her in this podcasting group we're in, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to have her on my podcast. She has a podcast called Ignite Your Spark. So it actually might be, Kim, something that the listeners want to go and check out. So, and we'll get into what the topics are, because I did notice they are a little woo-woo, and I like introduced woo-woo to my life late in life, and I love the woo-woo. So we have that in common. So welcome to the program.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you so much for having me. What a delight to not have to prepare, to just be on a podcast, and on yours in particular, because I love your brand and your ideas and
Yeah.
everything. So
Yeah.
thanks.
We'll probably just like go on forever.
Yeah.
So yeah. And she's so cute. You have to look at my YouTube channel if you don't do that, because she's wearing this bright orange sweater, which pops like everything about you. And I love your glasses.
Thank you.
They're very stylish, but you
Thank
kind of,
you.
you kind of have a fashion background.
I do. I
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Are you okay with me saying your age? I forgot to ask
Yes,
you.
I am
Okay.
absolutely. I am age positivity. I am all for saying my age. So go ahead.
Yeah, good. I think I've only had one person who was reluctant to say their age. So yeah, you're 65,
I am.
unless you've aged since,
Nope.
you
No,
filled out
I
the
have a few
application.
more months before I hit those double digits.
I know. Don't you hate it when people like, I used to do that. And this past birthday, I'm like, I am not saying what age I'm going to be. I'm going to say the age I am until the very last minute.
Same. Absolutely. As we get older, I think that is it. Although I'm proud of my age, I'm proud of who I am and the me that I've become and am becoming, it's still a number that we are faced with every single day.
Yeah.
And the
And we
wrinkle.
and we and we we've what's the word? We advance ourselves. It's like we're not in the present moment. When we're saying
Yeah,
I'm going to be whatever, we're not embracing that which we are at the moment. And so I
that's
was like, gosh,
really,
I'm just shortchanging myself,
yeah, it's
you
a
know?
great way of putting it.
Yeah.
Great way of putting
Like
it.
am I at this age only for like 6 months, and then I start like being a year older already? So anyways, yeah. And so, yeah, why don't we start there? Because I love the fact too that you were inspired to start a podcast at age 64. So you started a little bit later than me, but I would love to know why you started your podcast. So where do you want to start? Do you want to start with like where you were? You like had a fashion career and then that
I can
changed, or
I can
where?
go anywhere, and
Okay.
I've never met a microphone I didn't like, and I can talk and talk and talk, so you might just have to stop me. And I know, because I interview a lot of people, right? That that sometimes they go on, and I have to go, let me ask. So you just stop me. I'm okay with that. Well, first of all, yes, I have a background Oh, I have a background in so many things, but I grew up in, I was an only child in Miami Beach, Florida, and my parents loved fashion. My dad loved fashion. He used to shop for us, for my mom and I, and he had custom clothes, and it was awesome. I mean, I loved clothes. I loved dress up. I had a dress up box. I still have a dress up box, okay, truth be told. But I loved fashion, and I also loved theater. I loved performing. I loved making people laugh. I loved dance. I loved singing. I loved it all. And of course, my parents said when I was going to college that no, that wouldn't be the right track to take.
Aren't parents, they just poo-poo our dreams.
Well, yes, and thus I have not poo-pooed my own children. One is a yoga instructor in the UK and one is a tattoo artist. So you know what? You
Very,
pursue what you want to pursue. But
yeah,
anyway,
that's
I
awesome.
had a fabulous upbringing, wonderful education, went to college, great school, went to graduate school, which I really wanted to go to Yale Drama School. My parents were like, no, get a skill you can rely on. So I went to college, Syracuse University, master's degree in broadcast journalism. Yeah, it only took me 40 years to actually do what I had originally kind of wanted to do, which was interview people. I'd always wanted to do that. But a career in fashion followed me, advertising, PR, tried to be an actress, and then ended up at Glamour magazine. So yes, I loved it. I traveled the country. I put on fashion shows. It was so much fun. I moved to California because I had dated everybody in New York when I lived there. And I was like, oh, well, I'm
Nobody
30. It's
left.
time to meet someone new. Sure enough, I met my husband, who's been my husband for 32 years,
Well, you
6
said,
months
I think in
after.
the application was your soulmate, like your
Did
love
I
of your
say that?
life or something? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, totally. I
I
mean,
love
he is
that.
the best person. I'm
Yeah.
so fortunate to have found him, or the universe, we planned it before we came to Earth. I know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway, I
And so how old were you when you met him?
30
Okay.
and we got married at 33.
Hmm.
So,
Cool. And what
yeah.
did he have like, was he in acting, or
Oh,
did
no,
he have
no,
passion for
no,
any of the
no, no,
creative stuff,
no. It's
fashion or
that
anything?
opposites
Yeah.
attract thing,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
No, he's an engineer brain, but fun and funny and sweet and kind and all the good stuff. So
One thing
no,
that
but
you
he's
brought
super.
up, one thing you brought up in my mind that I've never mentioned, and I have even forgot until now, is that I did think about wanting to be a journalist. I did think about, because and I was interested in talking to people, like interviewing people. I always thought it would be interesting to be like on the in the metro, the metro section,
Yeah.
be an interview and journalist on those stories, like the crime ones, like
Oh,
going in.
interesting.
Yeah, this was before the crime shows. And then I
Oh,
ended up marrying a police officer, and he became a homicide detective, and he
oh,
actually solved a huge capital murder case. It was the first capital murder case in the state of Virginia where he was convicted solely on the DNA. And it was like,
oh,
yeah, it was in the late 80s. So it's
oh.
almost like, I don't know if, like, in a way, I didn't become a crime reporter or journalist, became the wife of a homicide investigator.
Whoa, that's
Yeah, it was
interesting.
fascinating. So
Oh,
fascinating.
what a
Yeah.
life. We watch a lot of British crime dramas in my house, so everything I know I learned on TV. Just like about doctors.
But
But
the tie-in, and I know I'm going to ask you later, but the tie-in to this thing in the past that I had this inkling for, that I completely suppressed and didn't think about till now, and it's probably why I love my podcast so much,
yeah.
because I'm doing that. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, we have those niggles in the back of our niggles. I made that word up. Whatever. In the back of our head that are always there about something we loved, some passion, which is a big message of mine to pursue your passion at any age. I always wanted to do theater, but whatever. I did fashion, which was I got to direct fashion shows. I had my own fashion show production company for about 25 years out here in California. And I really enjoyed watching the transformation of people. This is a whole different part of me, but of people when they got on stage, because it was primarily, yes, I worked with professional models, but I also worked with real people doing benefits for schools and organizations. And I saw the transformation that some cute clothes and makeup and a little positive coaching could do for someone and really lift them up and shine their light. And
Yeah,
that
I
gave
love it when
me,
Hoda, and I don't watch it too much these days, but I love what's her face, Hoda and
Oh, oh,
Jenna Bush. I
oh,
love
no.
Jenna. I was so glad that Jenna but I haven't watched it. But when they have the fashion piece, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, like it's so
Yeah.
amazing what it can do for somebody.
Exactly. I never watch it, but I listen to it in the radio in the car on Sirius, and I will tell you that is what I wanted to do. I want to be Hoda's co-host. I mean, I really want to do what they do. It's
Yeah.
just been a dream. That is what I went to school for. I admired Oprah and Katie Couric and all those
Yes.
people. Although I'm not a hard news hitting person, I really much prefer the lifestyle and inspiration. So that's, I just guess I started the podcast because I was divinely guided to do so. I'm just going to say, I
Yeah.
just,
Yeah. So did you like, was it all a sudden thing? Is it something you thought of and sat on for a little while?
okay, well, truth be told, I also write a newsletter, the San Francisco edition of a newsletter called The Three Tomatoes for Women Over a Certain Age. Things to do in the Bay Area. There's New York, LA, all sorts of national information. And the head editor of that decided, she said, do you want to do a podcast with me? So I was the co-host of a podcast starting in, I don't know whether it was 2018. We had a podcast and I would do like every other or every third episode. So I did do that, but for some reason it wasn't enough. And I thought, I really want to interview the kind of people I want to interview. I loved the people I interviewed. Some of them were fabulous, not that, but I wanted my own. I wanted my own brand. I wanted my own thing.
Yeah. Your
So
own
when
voice. Yeah.
pandemic, right?
Yeah.
I decided to do a class for like 14 people, most whom I knew, called Ignite Your Spark. And I am a certified creativity coach. We don't use it, but I've had a lot of coaching, life experience. So I created this class and I've done events for women and it was super fun. And I thought, Ignite Your Spark, that's my new brand. And I don't know, I just decided on my 64th birthday to launch a podcast. And learning the editing was learning new skills and firing up synapses in my head. One of the things I encourage people to do is learn something new, at least every year, if not every month or every day. You can't do it every day, but because it just changes your brain and really opens up parts of you that you never knew you could access.
Yeah, that's one of my I have this thing I've created called the Spark system, which is like so crazy that we have like this
I know, I love
common
it.
theme. Yeah. But one of the things that I encourage people to do every day is to write down the one thing they learned that day or realized, because I think when you get like a download or an aha moment, it's super valuable. And we just lose those because we never, they just kind of come and whiz in and out, and we don't reflect on them.
Yeah.
And then at the end of 30 days, I sit down and I look at all of the 30 things that I learned or realized, and it makes me feel so good that I
Oh my
had.
gosh, I'm
Yeah.
starting that today. I have
Yeah.
my journal right here. Such a great idea. Something else I heard on a podcast was a woman because I'm big on gratitude, do the gratitude thing every day, all
Mhm.
the day long. But what she did is she would take out her notes section, I think it was in her phone, and every time she did something or saw something, she wrote down, I am grateful for, like, I just completed yoga in the park today. I mean, I just did yoga and I haven't done it, but I could say, I am grateful for that outdoor yoga. And then if you eat a great meal, I am grateful for that fabulous meal, or I am grateful for this gift or whatever. And then at the end of the day, you look at the one which is the most powerful and say, thank you for that. I
I
love that.
love that. It's almost like spontaneous gratitude. Like instead of
Yes.
like forced where you sit down once a day, I am going
Right.
to start doing that. So
I know. Is
gosh,
that
we
good?
just both
Well,
shared the
together
tip.
we are
Yeah.
gonna just like ignite
Yeah.
sparks
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah. So there's 2 tips for people who are listening. Yeah. That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So I don't know where I was. We were all over the
well, yeah,
place.
you were talking about how all these, the podcasting,
Oh
and you
yeah.
like to interview people, and then you had this idea. So you just acted on it. So
Yeah.
I waited for like 3 years. I had this idea, and it wasn't a fully formed idea. It was, I want to do a podcast, but it was like, I don't really know what it is until one day, boom, it came. But I wish I had like invested some quiet time into like contemplating, because I think it would have come sooner. But I did it. But once I had the idea, I went forward full force. So I love that you took the action and you didn't sit on it. So is there
Yeah.
anything that that you think makes you different, that you would take that really inspired action versus pushing it away?
People ask me, sort of versions of that question. And I think a lot of it has to do with the personality with which we are born, how we come onto this earth plane, how we are raised, the conditioning that we receive from 0 to whatever age we are today.
Mhm.
And I was very fortunate because my parents were very loving, giving. You can do anything. You are beautiful. Even when I did not feel beautiful, when I was a gawky teenager, they were so supportive of me. And I think support from other people is really, really important and validating. Now, that being said, I have stories in my life. My mom died when I was 22. And at that time, after she passed away, my dad said, "Can you go through this room in the storage room, whatever?" For some reason, he said, "Do that." And I found out I was adopted. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was a challenge at the time. And yet I was raised on woo woo, such that
Mhm.
I believed in life after life. And I knew that even though my mother had passed, and it's really hard to grasp it at the time that she was still around and there are reasons for everything.
Yeah.
So there was a reason. And so
Yeah,
that
it's just
being said,
hard that you couldn't have that conversation with her, you know?
and I did not have that conversation with my father either. This was 1 month after my mom died, and he's grieving, I'm grieving. I'm in graduate school at the time. I told a girlfriend who then told her mom she was adopted and she was in school with me, and her dad had died. So we had a lot of parallels. So she told her mom then called my dad and said, "I just think you should know." And my dad didn't say anything until we met in Manhattan the next month. I was back at school and we met in the city, and I'll never forget eating it like a pastrami sandwich at this deli. I don't eat meat now, but I can remember eating that sandwich, and him saying to me, "I have to tell you something," and his eyes getting all red and tearing up. And he said, as if I didn't know, he said, "You were a chosen child." He always said I was a chosen child,
Mhm.
but he described that it meant I was adopted. And
Mhm.
that's a whole other story. It's a
Mhm.
story.
Yeah.
And
It's
so
funny
you,
because I
yeah.
have I had a similar feeling in my life, but I wasn't adopted. But what it was I found out that I was an accident. So,
Oh,
and I was
yeah.
trying, and it was so funny because it backfired on me. I was trying to get my dad to admit my sister was an accident,
Oh,
because they were married and she was born 9 months later. But my mom had 8-month pregnancies, so they were married in March. My sister was born at the end of December. They were married at the beginning of March, so they got pregnant really quick. But he was like, "No, no, actually, we wanted her." And he said, "You were the accident." And I was like, "Oh," and I was like,
yeah.
it really hit me hard. And I thought, first of all, karma's a bitch, Lori. But because I was trying to get her, and I didn't even think about what her feelings would be if she was an accident. And
Yeah.
I never really realized how I'd feel until I actually felt it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I wasn't supposed to be, instead of thinking, oh, I was created on purpose for some reason. They were using, he said the rubber broke is what he said. And when he found out my mom was pregnant, he said, I mean, he told me the whole story. And he said, I went running down the street screaming because they didn't have a lot of money and he was in school and working at a gas station.
Ooh,
And so I think I took on the fact that, oh my gosh, um, I wa I wa I wasn't supposed to be here, when in fact, holy crap, what a miracle that I am here.
yeah.
And so
Well,
I
that's a
think
good
I
way of,
finally got to that place where I was like, looked at it in a more of a positive, and I'm special because I I got through that rubber.
you were able to reframe it because you were meant to
Yes.
be here. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. How old were you when you found that out?
I was an adult.
Yeah.
So I was I think I don't think I had kids yet. I think I was I think I was married, maybe not with kids or just, out of college, age
Yeah.
early 20s.
Well, that can imprint in you from when you were conceived. I've interviewed a lot of people who talk about that kind of thing. But, we are, from the moment we're conceived, we're getting messaging and conditioning. And that's what I thought a lot about when I found out. No, I didn't think about it when I found out I was adopted, because at that time I was like, didn't matter, didn't care, doesn't matter. It's a whole long talk I have, so I won't go into it, but
Do you
uh
have an episode that people can reference that you talk
no,
about
I
it? No?
don't. And I
Okay.
will be doing a solo episode on that,
Okay. Yeah. It's
because,
fascinating. Yeah. Well, we
I
can
keep
always have a
thinking,
part 2. We can get back together.
yeah, yeah, I keep thinking about, well, you'll have to be on mine too, so
Yeah.
we can talk further about things. But
Yeah.
so regardless, I was still raised in a very positive environment. I think a lot of that has to do with the way I am today. But I also think that that's my spark. That's what I was born with. We all have a spark, that, but it shows up differently in everyone. And my spark is to keep going. Is my spark is to discover, to explore, to challenge myself, to step outside of my comfort zone. That's my spark, and that's what I encourage other people to do as well. And I think that I like to learn new things. I love learning
Mm,
things that I want to learn. I mean,
mm,
I
yeah.
I practically failed history in college because I was like, I know I can't remember the data, but if it's theater or English or something I'm interested in, oh, just give me more and more and more. So
Yeah.
I like to
Yeah.
learn.
So it sounds like, taking action, getting outside your comfort zone is what sparks you when
Yeah.
you say that. Yeah.
Well, yes. I mean, it's bypassing fear. I just interviewed someone who had written a book about fear and how it's so prevalent today,
Mhm.
and
Especially,
bypassing.
I think as we get older, more so.
Oh, yeah, of course, because we have that fear of, well, death, And I think for me, talking about imprinting, my mom died at 59. My dad died at 66. Well, I'm going to be 66. When I turned 60, I like wanted to celebrate because, wow, your learned behaviors, you get worried about that. Whereas I have friends who still have parents in their 90s. They don't think about that because they are, seeing what happens as you age, good,
Mhm.
bad, indifferent. But
Yeah.
I didn't have that. I mean, I never, I say that about parenting my kids who are 30, almost 31 and 29. I say, well, I was not parented at that age. I don't know how that transition happens. So
Yeah.
at 22, my mom died. So I didn't know, how am I supposed to make my relationship with my daughter work now? Am I a friend? Am I a mother? Am I a this? So much is inherent or within us from our past that we don't even know. And so we have to ignite our own spark.
Mhm.
That's the
Yeah.
thing we have to do, is we can't count on other people. Sometimes we just have to let go of the circumstances, of the environments, or try or attempt to release our past so that we can be present and then move into the future in a new, sparkly, shiny way.
Yeah. Yeah, and it sounds to me like you're really in tune with who you are and what you love, and so many people, I think, have fallen into a pattern, which I understand because I was like that, doing something for the wrong reason,
Mhm.
because it makes money or to help people, or to please your parents or your spouse or whoever it may be, and then you end up maybe even developing a skill you're good at, but it just doesn't spark you. It just kind of empties you. And so I find that with a lot of people is they're so afraid, the fear comes in because it's like, oh, well, if I do something different, I'm gonna disappoint people or I'm gonna be judged for it. And so, but you just embrace you and you do you, and it comes through, and that is your spark.
Well, I think the other thing for people is it's so comfortable in your comfort zone. Why would I want to leave this? And I try to tell people, because you don't know what's on the other side of that comfort zone. There's a whole world waiting out there for you.
Which we perceive is like do you ever watch Stranger Things? I like that. It's the underside or whatever they call it. It's the
I don't
other
know. I
world.
only
It's like
watched a couple of the
yeah.
first seasons. Yeah.
It's dark and it's
Yeah.
scary and there's
Yeah.
monsters there. So that's what they perceive as there versus the, the Wonderful Wizard of Oz, you know?
Right,
It's
right.
colorful and yeah,
Yeah, oh, that's a whole other analogy, with
yeah.
the wizard behind the curtain. I
That's
love
true.
that.
Maybe that wasn't and the monkeys.
And the monkeys. Well,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
interviewed an author who wrote a book called Soul Lessons from the Wizard of Oz. So interesting. So
Oh.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I need to, really check out I was looking at your podcast episodes, and there's probably a lot of good people that I would wanna have on
Yeah, there
my
might
podcast.
be.
Yeah, yeah.
Same, same.
So you were in fashion, work for Glamour magazine, and then you uprooted and moved. You said you met your husband, you moved out there. You said you're now, before we started recording, you said you're a California girl through and through. So
Yes, yes.
what made you move from New York to California?
Oh, that universe thing. It's time to move.
Well, you said you had
And
dated everybody in New York, so that
yeah, I
was really
dated
important.
everybody in New York, so that was done.
A new, you just were looking for new guys. You wanted a
I
California
actually,
guy.
no, I loved my job. I loved working for Glamour magazine, but I had turned 30 and I was traveling around the country 6 months out of the year, every week. It was a lot of travel. I don't know. I just felt it was time to leave. I really just, sometimes things like that, we have to listen to that stall, as my mom said, small, still voice inside. And I don't quiet down very often. I do every morning now and I have for several years. I spend time in silence, but I didn't really do much of that. But when a voice wants to come through, it does. When it's time for your next move, if you don't still yourself, it's going to pound you over the head until you make that move, whether you believe in guides, angels, the universe, whatever. It's just sometimes we need something to move us forward. I don't know exactly what that was, but I had visited a girlfriend who had moved to San Francisco and loved it. I just loved it. It was beautiful. Manhattan in the 80s was gross and disgusting. I loved it, don't get me wrong, but it's not the way it is now, more pristine and cleaned up. It was kind of gross. And both my parents had passed, and I had all this furniture and storage in Miami. And I thought, I'm living with, two other girls in this penthouse apart. I say penthouse. It was not a penthouse, but it was a top floor building and small, and thought it was just time for a change. So I packed up without a job thinking, I have all this great credentials. I worked for Glamour. I worked for this great PR company, Burson Marcel. I worked for Doyle Dane Bernbach Advertising. I get out to California and nothing. I had enough money to get an apartment and live for a couple of months, but I had a really hard time finding a job. But I did eventually, and ended up as the fashion director at Saks Fifth Avenue in Palo Alto. And that was the right job after a couple of little missteps. But I just wanted to move. I loved San Francisco, and I thought, if not now, when? I was not attached to anybody. It was time for an
And
adventure.
Saks in its day was, I mean, I don't know what it's doing now. I know a lot of the larger department stores aren't doing as well with all the
Yeah.
online stuff, but yeah, that's a pretty cool place, I'm sure, to
Yeah.
work there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of how I
And
got out here, and then met my husband through mutual friends. 2 years later, got married. Year later, had a kid, had another kid.
and you said you were PTA president.
Oh, yes, I was PTA president twice.
Yeah. I say those people, I would hire them in a heartbeat. When I used to manage people at a Fortune 500 company, and I did a lot of hiring, there was this woman, and she had 4 kids, and she was the PTA president. I was like, dang, she's like stay-at-home mom, but is more organized, more creative, more everything. I would hire her in a minute.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
to be fair, I'm a really good idea person.
Mhm.
And so if there are people to implement those ideas, spot on. I can do some of it, but with 2 kids, and I was producing fashion shows part-time and PTA president, I loved having the people I could say, okay, let's do that. And they'd do it. So,
Yeah, bringing people together kind of sounds like
yeah.
a
Yeah. I
good
love
thread.
community. I really love community.
Yeah,
And I have missed that a lot over the past few years.
yeah. So one of the things you said is that you love to do motivational speaking,
Yes.
and why well, we know that why that's true, right?
Well, we know that's true because I love making people laugh. I
And
love
the
making people,
performer,
I'm a
because you wanna be
performer.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Would you wanna be a comedian?
I've thought about it. People ask me that, I mean, a lot, but I I don't know. It's funny because there's a local improv company in San Francisco where I've taken years, 4 or 5 years improv classes, and they're offering a stand-up comedy workshop class, but it's 4 Saturdays and I'm away for 2 of them. If I could take a class like that and see, do I want to really, stand up though in a club at 9 o'clock at night and be heckled? Not really,
I Yeah, I mean,
So
I think like comedy acts are having a hard time right now, because nothing can be funny because it's all politically incorrect, no matter what direction you're coming from. You're gonna have somebody in the audience who like doesn't agree with you, right? So it can
exactly. That's why
be
I think I would
dangerous. Yeah.
sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you, but that's why I prefer like motivational speaking because I can do it. Well, I'm putting it out there in the universe that I can do this. I can do it. It's just a matter of finding the right avenues. But
It's kind of hard
because
when
you're
there's
not,
lockdown too. So
yeah,
yeah.
that's when I sort of started the whole process and then boom, did a couple things online.
And you said you were modeling. You started modeling
I
too
did.
at 64?
Yes, I did. And by modeling, I mean, I'm not a model, but I do print model ads for those of us who have white hair. I found that once I let my hair go white, thank you, pandemic, and then decided to try my hand at some commercially acting kind of things, I was getting a few more jobs than I did prior, years before when I tried. So I love it. I get paid to like sit there and look at a microwave or I don't know.
That's so funny. Yeah, now we have to like everything has to be about diversity, and
Yes.
it's including like people older, like the seniors.
Yes.
You have to have seniors and stuff now.
Well,
So we're
that's
in the right
why
age for
I
that.
am, that's exactly right. And because when I do these shoots, I did one that I couldn't be on your podcast the first time for an appliance store, very high end. And there were about 6 of us, and there were 2 other white women, but I was clearly the oldest, and several Hispanic men, Asian men. I mean, they really are very big on including everybody, which I love. And I do think that you should include those of us who have white hair
Yeah,
because,
because there's a lot of, I mean, there's a lot. Our you know population is growing by the minute
yeah.
because of baby boomers all reaching that age.
And
Yeah.
everybody's, a lot of more people have stopped coloring their hair. So there's a
Yeah.
lot more evidence of us.
It's so funny. My husband and I just had our anniversary celebration, and the last 2 nights we were at a hotel, and
Oh,
I said, I need to get my hair done. My hairdresser does such a good job on my hair that she puts herself out of work, because I used to have to go like every 8 weeks, and now I go like every 6 months. So she colors
oh,
it in a way that the gray doesn't like stand out when it grows out.
right.
And he said, I'd be fine if you just let your hair get all gray. He goes, then he said, my husband always, he tries to compliment, but he fails at it usually. He
Yes.
says, I mean, if you were younger, I wouldn't want it, but you're 63. You can go gray now. And I was like, you know what? I think I might go gray. I think I made a decision yesterday that I'm going to go gray.
Well, it's very light and very pretty,
Yeah.
so your hair is gorgeous.
So it's so funny that came up. But anyways, yeah. So you had a great question in your application that I wanted you to answer before we run out of time. So what did you want to be when you were a young child, and how is that reflected now? Was it a performer when you were little?
Yes, of course. I mean, I think
Okay.
I answered that question.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, when I was, from the time I can remember, I wanted to be on stage. I took ballet from the time I was 3, and performances, dance performances, every single play in school. I was very fortunate. I went to a small private school. I went to all private schools, and they encouraged every single person to get on stage every week or whatever, once a month, whatever it was, and you had to read something, or everybody had to be in the school plays. I mean, you were encouraged to be on stage, and you can imagine I was like, yeah, send me up there. And same with my high school, 7th through 12th grade, all girls. We were encouraged to speak. You were always encouraged. So for me, that was awesome. I tried out for every play. It's part of my nature. I'm a performer. And I realize that now I used to think it was very egocentric, because look at me, look at me. But now at this age, it's more aspirational. I want to say, look at me. Yeah. I also, during the pandemic, got my yoga teacher training. I just come on, people, you can do it. So it's more about that rather than the focus on me. I mean, I still have the ego involved, clearly, but I put on makeup and I got all these things burned off of my skin and I look like I have monkey pox. I had to put a ton of makeup on today. I thought, but you just go out in the world, and if people don't like you, they don't like you. You have to be who you are. You just have to
Did
be
you have
who
any
you.
siblings?
Only child.
Only child. Yeah. So I had a sister, and we used
Right?
to
The
play
the
role.
non-accident, the non-accident sister.
Yeah, yeah.
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 So you,
Yeah, the
right.
non-accident, so she's the only one. But we're 14 months apart, and she's a year ahead. But we used to role play. And so I wouldn't say we like to act, but we used to like role play and have fun. And I remember we used to play like saloon girl and cowboy. And it's funny, like we would fight over who's going to be the girl and who's going to be the boy. And my parents even had this fake brandy glass where it looked like there was stuff in it, and you tilted
Yeah.
it and it wouldn't spill or anything. And
Yeah.
I remember playing with that and pretending we were drinking out of it. But it was fun to have a sibling to do those things with. And so I was wondering if you just did it, and I'm sure dance class and all that stuff really helped as well, because you could do those recitals.
Yeah. I did play by myself a lot, but I had friends over and yeah, I loved
Yeah,
it.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. So one of the things that I was thinking about is, what do you think about the empty nest? Because that's one of the things that the platforms that I stand on, is that I think that there's such a hole for people. You had a lot of activities around your kids because being PTA present. And I think kind of a hole forms after, and it either sucks us down or we climb out of it. And it
Yeah.
was hard for me. I had a full-time, very, I was a vice president at AOL, so I had a very demanding career. And and I loved it. There was times that, I just loved my job there. And then there was times, and then especially, but I think I loved it because I had my kids. Because like I was so happy being a mom that didn't matter what else I did or what my work
Mm.
was. And now that I know more about what sparks me, there was periods in my job where I was doing more of the coaching activities, where I was managing people, and I had a large team and we were working on a goal together. So kind of the things that I do as a coach that light me up, I was able to do at work. And then the times that I didn't have a team and I was kind of like a one person show, I hated those jobs. So I've learned a lot in retrospect, but I do believe that a lot of what kept me going and so happy was that role of mom. and
Oh
and
yeah.
and my children, I was a coach, right? I was their advisor, I was their teacher, trainer, whatever. And they were in sports. When they were younger, I coached their sports, and when they left, it was and it was kind of a gradual leaving. So it really didn't hit me until they finished college and moved out,
Right.
because they were still coming home all the time. So I'm curious, because you seem to have so much energy and seem to have been so happy your whole life, and kind of known what you love to do and pursued it. I'm just wondering if you ever felt that hole, if you ever felt like this empty nest syndrome that
Oh
is, I
yeah.
think, a real thing.
Yes, absolutely. I'll tell you, I didn't hit for a while as well, because my daughter went to college and came back, so that my kids both went in California. And then when my son went to college, he was an athlete, he was a diver. So we went to diving meets, a lot. We traveled, and that sort of ignited my spark seeing my child do this, and it gave me sort of a focus. And then after 2 years, he stopped. And then I was like, well, now what do I do? Yeah, now what? I think I had just about stopped doing fashion shows because they ended up being a ton of work. And I still sell a line of men's custom clothes. And I was doing that. And yeah, I went through whoa, this is not fun. I want to focus on my babies. I want to be there for them. So yeah, it was really challenging. It
Yeah.
definitely
And you were
was.
probably in your early 50s, because if I'm doing the math,
Well,
because you were, oh,
yeah,
when
I was
they
in
got
my
out of college,
50s.
you were about, yeah, yeah.
My son's
So
29,
so
so
how did you, you know,
I
reset?
I just kept going. I
Mhm.
just
Finding
I
what
don't
was
even
interesting?
remember now. I just know that I had to move forward. So you kind of, it's like a puppeteer taking the string from the top of your head and lifting you up and making your arms move. And I just had that inner, let's just, what's next? What's next? I must have been doing a couple of things. Oh, and my daughter lived at home for a bit after college. And that was, gave me more reason to be, right?
Mhm.
And that was about the time, yeah, yeah. So, and she studied abroad, so I was like, oh, let's plan a trip there. So I think I just always found something to focus on. And it's
Mm.
actually been more challenging now. I think COVID has been the most challenging for me in terms of pursuing what's next. Yes, I started a podcast. You still feel sometimes like there's something else out there. Hopefully, people feel that way.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
still feel like there's something else out there. So,
Yeah, I feel like it's just the journey now, and it's like as long as I'm sparked and fulfilled and I'm in tune with that inner voice, it's going to lead me. Yeah, you're trusting that, and I trust that now. So I feel like it'll lead me in the right direction. And I actually just did it published today is I do one episode a week where I just do tips or topics, and I think
right.
you do that too, or periodically you do that.
Periodically.
But it was about like the lesson in what happens when you don't get what you want. And because I've reframed like not reaching goals and not getting what you want because it's meant to teach you something. You get the lesson you need or you get the goal you want, right? And
Right.
so it's like, I recently failed at a goal, and so it makes me step back and say, okay, what am I supposed to take, veer off the path this way, or what do I need to, because sometimes I think the universe gives us what we're ready to receive.
Right.
So if I'm not ready to receive it, what do I need to do then to do you still want it? Do you still want it? Or maybe you didn't really want it, or you wanted it for the wrong reasons. So yeah,
Right.
so I like that whole perspective of it's just a journey. And as long as you're feeling good about where you are, you'll be led to the right place.
Yeah. That's wise words. I'm going to have to listen to that episode for sure.
Yeah.
Because it
Yeah.
is true. And so much of it is listening to our inner voice,
Mhm. Yeah.
accessing our own inner wisdom because it's there. We just have
Mhm.
to take time to find it.
Yeah. 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 So, yes, do you have any last tips and suggestions, anything that you recently learned that you'd like to share before we close?
The thing that keeps coming up for me is to go inside, and we just mentioned it. But the one thing that I recommend, my little tip for people is even if you don't meditate, first thing in the morning, close your eyes, take a deep breath in and picture your heart and a little spark, like a little tiny spark from a sparkler, and then watch it fill your entire body and then send it out into the universe before you do anything so that you know that your spark is ignited and you are going to continue to ignite the sparks of those around you.
Oh my goodness. What a great tip. I'm gonna do that. I love that. I've done things where you like have a light that like, expands and then you're
Yeah.
kind of, yeah, that is, I love the spark idea.
It's
So
just our brand. That's the way it
yeah.
came to me. So
Yeah.
I do love that. We've learned so many things today. I'm
Yes.
going
I
to
think we
write
shared some
down.
good tips. Yeah. I'm gonna
Yeah,
start doing
I'm
my
really,
spontaneous gratitude.
I
I
know,
love that.
spontaneous gratitude and something I learn.
It keeps you in the moment. It really does keep you in the moment. It keeps you so present with always being gratitude. I recently I said grace. We weren't really religious at all when my parents, I think, were brought up to like their parents went to church and took them to church. But then and I was baptized, my sister was baptized, but then we would go to Easter Sunday church, but then that kind of fell off by 5 years old. But we always said grace when we were
We did
little.
too.
We
We
always
did.
said grace. God is great, God is good, and we thank him for it. And I thought, I looked back but I recently said, we are never grateful for our food. We're
Oh,
such a, we're such a busy, and the food supply shortages, we should start being grateful for it, right? But the thing is, we just like rush, and I'm a fast eater, and I'm like, it's a job, I gotta do it, and to just sit and just be grateful when before you even take a bite, it just like it's just a chance to take another deep breath, you know, before you take a
Yep.
bite, imagine that little sparkler in your heart, and thank God or whoever you believe in for the food that's going
Food.
to nourish your body. And that was really, to me, just another way of being grateful, in a very targeted, I
Well,
guess, way.
I guess that stems back to that theory, the man whose name I can't remember, with the water molecules, and how if
Oh, the
you
Japanese guy.
yeah, the
Yeah.
study,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
how important it is to really, you don't have to bless your food, but to be kind to it instead of like we do, shovel it in, which I do. But every morning, as part of my gratitude prayer, as it were, whatever, I do thank the universe for fresh organic food. So at least I'm saying it in the morning, even if I forget to say it at
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but just being grateful. I've heard many people say that if you say nothing else, if you can't meditate, just say thank you, thank you, thank you as many times
Mhm.
as you can throughout the day. And for something
Yeah.
specific, great. But just thank you for my spark. Thank you for my life. Thank you for my food. Thank you. That's the
Mhm.
best prayer you can ever say.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing with the spontaneous gratitude that I like is people don't realize how unaware we are, and that's one of the gifts that I've gotten in my late 50s, 60s, is that I'm much more aware. I'm aware of my thoughts, I'm aware of the beliefs can that can drive these thoughts, and fortunately know how to rewire them. And I just feel that it having that more than just the one time a day gratitude
Yeah,
exercise,
yeah,
keeping you in a state of awareness
right,
instead of in that unconscious, like going about, this automated way of being that we just lose
right.
sight of. And I think the world we live in is, contributing to that unconsciousness. And so,
Oh, of course it
yeah,
is.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, such good stuff. Such
Such
good stuff.
fun.
So we definitely have to get back together.
Yes,
And
yes,
yes, and I'd love to be on your podcast. So
yes,
yes,
definitely.
ignite your spark is her
That's it.
podcast.
Ignite your
Yeah.
spark.
And you've been very consistent. So I love to see people that are, commit to something and then they keep it up and are super consistent about it. So you're really
Yeah,
committed to that. I love that.
thanks.
So thanks for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Nice to meet you, Lori. Thank you so much for the opportunity to chat with another like-minded person
Yeah.
whom I relate to.
Yes. Yes. And power to the gray hair.
Power to the grays.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Not Your Average Lives podcast. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe on iTunes if you have an Apple device. You can find free resources and learn what else I have going on at the moment that might interest you on my website at notyouraverage.grandma.com. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook at Not Your Average Grandma. If you liked this episode, it would make my heart so happy if you could leave me a 5-star rating. You can also add a review to let me know what you like about this podcast, which will help spread the word about it to others who need a little midlife inspiration. As always, be you, listen to your inner voice, and focus on reigniting that lost spark so you can start living your own, not your average life.